It's just stealing and theft without any accountability.
I've said those words before, but it was a lie, and you deserve to hear them 1,000 times. If all it is to say that, why is it so hard to say? If all it is to say that, why am I in my own way? Why do I pull you close and then ask you for space? If all it is to say that is, why is it so hard to say?
And I was left out the front waiting for them to turn up, dangling the carrot of we're coming, we're coming. They was never coming. So I've actually done a crime report anyway online. And I'd already put a fraud report in the week before they turned up, and 2 stays of execution, one into the King's Bench and one into the Chancery Division. The whole system needs to change. There is no due process, there's no rule of law. We've been through the courts, and to be honest with you, once you do start going up there, you realise that they're creating fake writs, like this one. That's what it is. There's no judge's name. It cannot be issued from the Chancery Division, as well as the King's Bench in the Central Office. And that's why these High Court enforcement officers do not serve them. That ran out in 2020. So this is like, basically they just carry on going. If you listen to one of the tapes, Scott Hines, who I now know is a certificated bailiff, not a High Court enforcement officer, he had no right to be here in the first place. They cannot delegate their powers unless it's a writ 53, which is a writ of control, which means for goods. So that would make sense because you'd have thousands of them, but you wouldn't have that many possession orders, which this wasn't, and you wouldn't have a writ of restitution to back it up. So that's what's happening. They are just sending their pals round who have got no right to be there. The police are just hoodwinked, or they're part of it, and that's what's going on. This was to do with council tax. My partner had the bill in his name. If you look up the national debt line, you'll see that only a person whose name the bill is in has to pay it. But what they did very cleverly, they flipped it and put it into my name. It wasn't in joint names, so they had no right. Under the General Data Protection Act, GDPR, they must tell you where they've obtained your data. Your data is your gold, not theirs. And Maidstone Borough Council won't answer, and the MP won't make them answer. So that's what happened there. It was a council tax. We went to the magistrates' court. Guess what? They was all blocking the council, the magistrates' doors. So when it was my turn, I said to her, "Who are you?" And she flipped her, because she asked me who I was. I said, "More importantly, who are you?" She flipped her badge, and I got the name Tracy. And I said, "What's going on here?" She said, "Oh, this is a pre-paper hearing." I said, "There's no such thing." And then when it came to the bankruptcy, this was a clever bit. We never knew. They flipped it after it was paid below the bankruptcy level. In those days, it was £750. And what they did was, even though it was paid, they moved it to the different year. They can't do that because we sent them a letter. But we didn't find out for a couple of years later in a witness statement that what they actually had done. But by the time you get to this stage, you go through the courts, the appeal courts, they lead you up the garden path. All of them do. They're all working together. And that's your lot. So Maidstone Borough Council apparently filed a petition. We've never got any evidence from the court that they've done that. Filed it and said, too bad, we've moved the money, basically, which they can't do, into a holding account. But what I never knew was the girl that originally got the payment and the letter put it into the correct year. So this other one come along, I said, no, you can't do that. We want it put into the wrong year so we might get bankrupt. That's what they do. They want a building development on the back. We used to have a beautiful big eucalyptus tree. It leant like the Leaning Tower of Pizza. One night, it just fell down, no wind, all on its own, knocked the shed 8 foot up in the air. Of course, it had a protection order on it. Nothing was ever said. I stopped them putting 18 townhouses down there. They've got bungalows, and that is valuable building land because it backs onto that development. And I had a letter from somebody when they first did it saying, oh, would you like to sell? It took them 2 years to build them. So this would be prime for somebody to pick up as a bargain. Building permission on the side for 5 beds, sell the bottom of the garden or build a nice £500,000 bungalow. You're in profit, aren't you?
So do you trust the police?
No.
And do you trust...
The courts? No. The judges? No. The councils? No. The lot? No.
Do you have any trust in anybody?
The people that turned up.
I think the people have the power as well, to be honest.
They
But a lot of
should.
people exercise that power, do they?
No, because it's took me a long time to learn what they've done and that they can doctor these orders that are not coming out of the court. And they are being doctored on the EC filing system. Most people don't know what that is. An EC filing system is an automated system. Now that should come down with a complete black seal on it, but the clerks can go in and alter it and remove stuff. Because I've seen it on my own documents. Well, I would call it fraud.
Yeah.
That's why I put a fraud report to Kent Police. Because if this was a legit, it would have the judge's name for starters. It wouldn't say that it was issued from the central office. Now, what you don't realise is the central office is the Queen's Bench, Central Office Action Department. And then suddenly be sealed on the 8th by the Business and Property Courts. This is what you need to see. This is a freedom of information which is shown to the police, and it states quite clearly down the bottom that nothing was issued on the 5th of January from the King's Bench.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's like the King's Bench, they're all complicit.
the King's Bench, it says the number of writ 68s issued by the King's Bench on the 5th of January, which was when Alex Chalk, I think, the Lord Chancellor, come on, how can he be a witness for a different date? He cannot. So if it come from the King's Bench, it should be sealed by the King's Bench. So what's happened is the number of writ 68s, the King's Bench have issued none, basically, nil on the 5th of January. So they was also asked about the Business and Property Court. There you go. The Business and Property Court, top line. Says,
Neither issued or sealed
there you go.
any writs.
Oh dear, what, the 8th of January? Isn't that
What
funny?
date was that? Letter?
This letter was done on the 9th of Feb. Quick off the mark for the EC filing. Police ignored it.
And the way they've dealt with it all matters. And the police, do you think they'll come back?
I've no idea if they come back. If they're working for the trustees or the councils, because the councils pay them, don't they? They collect their revenue through council
What are the
tax.
police doing about your fraud claim?
I've no idea. They've not actually, it's gone in, it's been submitted, and a complaint went in again today, but they haven't come back to me on it.
Can I ask you, you've paid your mortgage off completely,
Yeah.
haven't you? So you don't actually own anything on your mortgage?
No.
And what was the initial council tax amount
I
for?
think originally, before the bankruptcy, it was like 1,400 quid.
Right.
So we halved it, so it was below the bankruptcy level of 750. And what we never knew, I should add this, that on the 1st of October, remember they did this apparently in September, it went up to £5,000.
How did it go up overnight like
Well,
that?
because, no, what happened was the bankruptcy threshold
All right.
went up. So they couldn't have bankrupted me after October for 750 because it had increased to 5,000. So nowadays you need to have 5,000 owed.
Right,
In
yes,
those
that's
days
right.
it was only 750. I think John's even asked the MP, Helen Watley, I think is how you pronounce her name, where did you move the funds? Who let them have the right to move the funds? And where is her data? Who did you get it from? 2 questions, won't answer. And she has all evidence of this. She has the corruption. So there is about as much use as chocolate for Highgard.
I would love to go through, possibly, if you don't mind, what happened when you got evicted.
Our government